Welcome to the Thinking Stack.
Great to be here.
You know, we hear so much about these, well, almost perfect places, right? Always topping the charts for happiness.
The Nordic nations, Finland, Denmark, Norway.
Exactly. Iceland, Sweden. They seem to have it all figured out. High GDP, great social support, you name it.
They certainly look idyllic on paper.
But what if, and this is what we're digging into today, what if that shiny surface is hiding something? Well, a bit more complicated.
A different emotional reality underneath.
Precisely. We're sort of exploring this idea of a potential smiling crisis. You know, this gap between the perfect postcard image everyone sees and maybe what some people are actually feeling.
That's a really intriguing angle, the gap between perception and lived experience.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Use the integrated thinking stack, our usual framework, to really peel back the layers on this Nordic image.
Moving past the headlines, past the standard reports.
Yeah, exactly. We want to use cognitive clarity, moral intelligence, systems foresight, all 7 layers.
Embodied insight, human-centered design, risk and resilience, and the execution engine.
Right. To see if we can uncover some maybe uncomfortable truths.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Layer 1.
Layer 1 it is. Cognitive cleanse. Let's try and see what's actually true, beyond the common perception.
Okay, so the common perception is overwhelmingly positive, largely thanks to things like the World Happiness Report.
Right. High GDP per capita, long, healthy lives, freedom to make life choices, strong social support, generosity, low corruption. It's an impressive list.
It really is. On paper, these societies look incredibly well-functioning. They seem to provide everything needed for a good life.
But then you stumble across data points that just don't quite seem to fit that perfect narrative. They feel a bit, I don't know, discordant.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
We'll take Iceland. Beautiful country, right? Strong sense of community, stunning nature. You picture everyone being incredibly content.
You do. It has that image.
Yet, according to OECD data from 2020, Iceland actually has the highest rate of antidepressant consumption in all of Europe.
The highest. In Europe. Wow.
Yeah. Not just high, the highest. 153 defined daily doses DDDs per 1,000 people per day.
Can you just remind us what a DDD actually represents?
Sure. It's basically the average dose an adult would take daily for a drug's main purpose. So 153 per 1,000 people.
Yeah.
That's, well, it's a lot of people taking antidepressants regularly.
That statistic really does clash with the happiest places on Earth image. It suggests a significant level of underlying distress being managed chemically.
It really does. And it's not an isolated blip for Iceland. The trend across most Nordic countries has actually been an increase in antidepressant use over time. Iceland just happens to be at the top of that particular list.
So it's a broader pattern, not just an Icelandic anomaly. What about other Nordic countries? Sweden, for instance, they're always near the top of the happiness list too.
Sweden, too. Yep. Their numbers aren't quite as high as Iceland's peak, but still very significant. In 2020, it was 105 DDD per 1,000 people per day.
Still remarkably high compared to many other parts of the world, places that don't get that top happiness billing.
Exactly. It makes you stop and think, doesn't it? It's a real cognitive dissonance situation.
It absolutely is. How can these nations be consistently ranked as the happiest, yet have such substantial portions of their populations relying on medications, seemingly to cope?
It forces us to ask, what are those happiness reports really measuring? Is it genuine, felt happiness, like joy, contentment, flourishing?
Or is it something else? Maybe societal stability, orderliness, efficiency.
Or perhaps even a cultural tendency towards emotional reserve. You know, keeping a stiff upper lip, not showing distress outwardly.
That's a crucial question. Maybe the reports capture the smooth functioning of the society, but miss the inner emotional landscape of the individuals within it.
And it's not just the medication data pointing towards this complexity. We also need to look at, well, much harder statistics.
Right.
Like suicide rates.
Right. Finland, for example. Famously #1 in happiness for, what is it now, 6 years running?
6 years. Unbelievable consistency. They must be doing everything right, supposedly.
You'd think so. But when you look at the data, say from Eurostat or the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare, their suicide rate, while it has decreased over the long term, which is good news.
Okay, so there's improvement.
Yes, but it still remains consistently higher than the average across the European Union.
Still higher than the EU average. Even after 6 years at #1 for happiness. That's really jarring. It's like the national mood doesn't quite match the international ranking. It throws a real wrench in the works of that simple happiness narrative.
It really does. What are these reports missing? Is it possible to have a society that functions well, looks great on paper, but where individual suffering, deep suffering, still persists at concerning levels?
It seems possible. Maybe that measured happiness is more about satisfaction with public services, trust in institutions, lack of corruption, less about, actual joy or deep emotional connection.
And this seems particularly acute when we look at younger people, doesn't it?
Yes. Let's go back to Sweden for a moment. Progressive, supportive, great quality of life. You'd imagine young Swedes having a pretty good time.
All the ingredients seem to be there for a thriving youth population.
But the Swedish Public Health Agency reported in 2023 that the leading cause of death for young people aged 15 to 29 is suicide.
The leading cause. Oh, that's rude.
It accounts for one-third of all deaths in that age group in a country like Sweden.
1 in 3 young lives lost that way in one of the world's model societies. That statistic is just devastating. It completely undermines the image of uncomplicated well-being.
It really does. It suggests some profound struggles happening beneath that calm, efficient surface, especially for young people who should have everything to live for.
It forces us to confront that maybe the societal structures, however well-designed, aren't meeting some fundamental human needs for everyone.
Which leads us perfectly into layer 2, moral intelligence. Let's grapple with the ethics here.
Okay. The ethical dimension. These societies are undeniably brilliant at providing the basics, right? Food, housing, healthcare, safety, education.
Top-notch. World-leading in many respects. Their welfare states are incredibly comprehensive.
So they excel at meeting those fundamental material needs. But here's the ethical question. If, in doing so, they somehow create an environment where a significant number of people feel unseen, unheard, lonely, maybe needing medication just to cope, can we ethically call that a total success?
Is it a success if your physical needs are met, but your soul feels unseen? Feels like maybe a hollow victory?
That's a good way to put it, a hollow victory. Basic needs covered, but the emotional core is struggling. Is that truly societal flourishing?
And it seems this isn't felt equally across the board, right? Certain groups seem to struggle more with this feeling of disconnection.
Definitely. Immigrants, for instance. People move to Nordic countries, often seeking that equality, that opportunity, that sense of belonging that's advertised.
They expect a welcoming environment, given the reputation.
Exactly. But remember that survey in the Helsinki Times from 2021? It found that 40%, 40, of international residents in Finland felt chronically socially isolated within their first year.
40% in the first year. That's staggering. You arrive hoping for connection and find isolation. It points to a real gap between the promise and the reality of integration.
A huge gap, and it suggests the process isn't just about getting paperwork sorted or finding a job. It's about that deeper human connection, which seems to be missing for many.
And crucially, it's not just immigrants feeling this way, is it?
No, that's the really troubling part. This sense of loneliness seems to affect native-born populations, too.
Right. Take the Danes, Denmark, the home of Hudge. That cozy, contented, connected feeling they've practically trademarked.
You'd think loneliness would be banished there, everyone wrapped in woolen blankets sipping hot chocolate.
You would. But around 2021, the Copenhagen Post reported, using official statistics Denmark data, that over 600,000 Danes over 16 felt chronically lonely.
600,000 in a country Denmark's size. What percentage is that?
It's more than 1 in 8 adults.
More than 1 in 8 adults feeling chronically lonely in the land of Hig. Wow, the irony is, well, it's pretty sharp.
It's incredibly stark. And again, like in Sweden, it's hitting young people hard too.
Yes, that same data showed over 26% of young women aged 16-24 reported social isolation, and over 18% of young men in that age group.
Over a quarter of young women feeling isolated. That's not just having a bad week. That signals something systemic.
It really does. So the moral question gets deeper. Is it enough for a society to just provide for basic physical needs?
Or is there a moral imperative to also actively nurture people's emotional lives? That fundamental need for connection, for belonging.
Because providing services efficiently isn't the same as fostering genuine community or emotional well-being. Ticking boxes isn't the same as filling hearts, so to speak.
Well put. And that brings us to layer 3, systemic foresight. If these trends continue, where does this lead?
Okay, thinking long-term. If we see continued high medication use, persistent loneliness, suicide rates staying relatively high despite the happiness rankings, what are the potential downstream consequences for these societies?
What's the trajectory? A future where everyone's comfortable but disconnected.
One real risk is that emotional suppression just becomes normal, the expected way to be. Reliance on medication could increase even further.
And those social bonds, the very fabric of community, could weaken over time, leading to more fragmentation, even with strong institutions on paper.
Exactly. And what about those ideals of equality and inclusion? If large numbers of people feel emotionally cut off, how real is that inclusion? It might be procedural, but not felt.
Like you're in the club, but nobody really talks to you at the meetings.
Something like that. Remember that EU social integration report from 2017?
Vaguely, yes. Remind me.
It found immigrants in Sweden and Denmark were twice as likely to feel chronically lonely compared to native-born people.
Twice as likely, even with all the integration programs they have.
Even with those programs. It suggests that the policies might be there, but they're not actually creating genuine belonging. There's a failure to bridge that emotional gap.
So the paradox is, the systems designed to support everyone might inadvertently be contributing to disconnection for some.
It's a definite possibility, a potential blind spot in the design. Which takes us nicely to layer 4, embodied insight. What are we fundamentally wired for as humans?
Right. Let's step back from the Nordic model specifically for a second and think about basic human biology. What do we need?
Well, at our absolute core, we are intensely social beings. Evolution has shaped us to need connection, to thrive in community. Our nervous systems are literally designed for it.
Through that concept you mentioned, co-regulation.
Exactly, co-regulation. It's how our nervous systems naturally find balance and safety through connection with others. It happens through eye contact, tone of voice, touch, simply being present with someone.
So it's not just a nice feeling, it's a biological necessity, like breathing.
Pretty much. It's fundamental. We regulate each other constantly, often unconsciously. Think of how a calm presence can soothe someone who's agitated. That's co-regulation in action. It's vital for our emotional stability.
Okay, that makes sense. So this deep biological need for connection and co-regulation, how does that square with some of the cultural norms we often associate with Nordic countries?
Well, that's where the potential tension lies. Nordic cultures often value composure, privacy, self-sufficiency, a certain emotional reserve.
Stoicism, almost. Don't make a fuss.
Kind of. Showing strong vulnerability, maybe appearing needy, can sometimes be seen negatively or at least make people uncomfortable. There's a pressure to handle things yourself, quietly.
So our biology is pulling us towards connection and sharing vulnerability, but the culture might be pushing towards keeping things contained.
That's the potential clash. Even simple interactions can sometimes feel a bit guarded, right? Like there's an invisible buffer preventing things from getting too personal too quickly.
And what happens physiologically when that need for connection, for co-regulation, isn't met consistently?
It's usually not a big, dramatic breakdown. More often, it's a kind of low-grade chronic dysregulation, a constant background hum of anxiety, maybe, or emotional flatness, that pervasive loneliness we've been talking about. It's like a slow internal wear and tear.
And this isn't just in our heads. You mentioned the physical health impacts of loneliness are serious.
Hugely serious. We have to mention Julian Holt Lundsted's research again. Her work around 2010 showed chronic loneliness is as damaging to physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
15 cigarettes. Every time I hear that, it just lands. It makes it so clear that social connection isn't a fluffy extra.
It's vital, absolutely vital for health, for longevity, not a luxury item.
Which brings us to layer 5, human-centered design. How does the actual design of these societies, the way things are set up, the way people interact, impact this need for connection?
Okay, so how does the environment, both physical and cultural, affect people's ability to connect? We know the support systems are impressive, efficient.
Super efficient. Things generally work really well.
But is there a gap between that functional design meeting material needs smoothly and the emotional experience of living within it? Does the focus on efficiency sometimes overshadow how things actually feel?
Like designing a technically perfect car that's just really uncomfortable to sit in for long journeys. The focus is on the mechanics, not the human experience inside.
That's a great analogy. And the cultural norms feed into this too, the reserve, the politeness that can create distance, prioritizing not intruding on others.
Maybe valuing avoiding awkwardness more than risking connection.
That could be part of it, and we absolutely have to talk about the law of Jonte here, Jonteloven.
Yes, the unwritten rules. Don't think you're special, don't think you're better than us.
Exactly. On the surface, it promotes equality, humility. which sounds good.
Sounds very egalitarian.
But in practice, can it have a kind of flattening effect, discouraging not just arrogance, but maybe also enthusiasm, individuality, honest, vulnerable expression?
Because standing out, even in a positive way, might feel like breaking the code.
Yeah.
So you just fit in.
Precisely. It's like this cultural software designed for group harmony through homogenization, which might inadvertently suppress the very vulnerability needed for deep connection. If everyone's trying hard not to seem special, it's hard to share the things that make you uniquely you, the good and the bad.
So the social landscape that results might be one where people hesitate to approach strangers, where friendships take a really long time to form, where the default setting is sort of emotional neutrality.
Optimized for smooth, frictionless, maybe slightly distant interactions rather than deep, messy, authentic connection. Which leads us to layer 6, risk and resilience. What happens when things go wrong?
Right. What happens in these efficient, perhaps slightly reserved societies during times of crisis? Personal tragedies, big societal shocks.
Can those efficient, maybe bureaucratic systems truly replace the warmth and immediate support of strong community bonds when someone is really struggling? When you lose a job or a loved one?
It seems unlikely. A forum can't give you a hug.
Exactly. And we're seeing rising anxiety, especially in young people. That anxiety can lead to withdrawal, which fuels more isolation. It's a vicious cycle.
Anxiety makes you hide, hiding makes you lonelier, loneliness makes you more anxious.
Right. And even well-funded mental health systems are often reactive. They treat problems after they arise rather than proactively building that community-level emotional resilience before crisis hits.
So there could be a deficit in resilience, feeling utterly alone even within a society that looks supportive on the surface.
It's a real risk, that feeling of falling through the cracks emotionally, even if the safety net is there materially.
And back to Holt-Lundstad, that 26% increased risk of early death linked to loneliness. That's a huge vulnerability, especially when times get tough.
It really underscores the life and death importance of connection. So, okay, final layer, layer 7. Execution engine. What can actually be done?
Yes. Let's shift to solutions. If this is a real issue, what are some concrete actions? How do we move forward?
I think the big shift is consciously designing for emotional integration and connection, not just material well-being. It has to be intentional.
So, moving beyond just GDP and infrastructure projects.
Yes. For example, think about physical spaces. We need more third spaces, cafes, community centers, parks, squares that are genuinely designed to encourage spontaneous interaction, make them welcoming, human scale.
Places where bumping into people and having a chat feels natural, not forced or awkward, less transactional, more relational.
Exactly. And education is key. We need emotional literacy taught from a young age. Give kids the skills to understand, articulate, and navigate their own emotions and connect healthily with others.
Build that emotional toolkit right from the start. Makes sense. What about helping immigrants integrate more deeply beyond just the practical stuff?
We need to foster real friendships, maybe more community mentor programs pairing newcomers with locals, social gatherings focused purely on building ties, not ticking bureaucratic boxes, going beyond policy to human connection.
Less about forms, more about friendships.
Precisely. And we are seeing some positive signs, like Denmark's co-housing movement, mixing generations and backgrounds, or those peer support talk circles gaining traction in Sweden. People are recognizing the need.
That's encouraging. It shows there's an awareness growing.
But the core point remains. Intimacy, belonging, deep connection, these can't be automated or mandated. They have to be cultivated intentionally at every level.
So wrapping this up, the Nordic model. Incredible achievements in social welfare, no doubt. Setting standards.
Absolutely remarkable in many ways, a testament to what can be done.
But beneath that surface, maybe more complex, even troubling emotional story is unfolding. A potential fragility.
Which takes us back to the happiness reports. What are they measuring? Felt human flourishing. Or stable, orderly, maybe emotionally contained, societal function.
Is it possible to be #1 in happiness but feel a bit empty?
It seems possible. Without that sense of aliveness, genuine connection, the freedom to be fully human, even Utopia might feel a bit, well, confining.
Like that perfectly comfortable cage we talked about. Statistically happy, but maybe not fully thriving inside.
And that's really what the thinking stack is all about, isn't it? Digging past the easy answers, questioning assumptions, even when it's uncomfortable.
Definitely. So a final thought for everyone listening. If this resonated at all, maybe, reach out, have a real conversation with someone, allow a bit of vulnerability, see what happens.
And trust your own experience, your feelings, your gut. That's vital data, too. It goes beyond the statistics. It's your internal compass.
Until next time, stay curious, stay honest, and above all, stay human.